Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this Friday afternoon, I'm joined by Alan Morrison and by Brian Degnan. Brian, welcome back. That's twice in a week that we've seen you, and a lot of people were messaging to say that it was great to see you back on the show last week. Alan, busy man, Celtic by numbers, the huddle breakdown, but once a month you manage to find time in that diary of yours to come and chat to Acsom as well. I'm going to start off with yourself, Alan. What do you make of the last week or so in the world of Celtic?
Yeah, it's remarkable, obviously. I do feel that the Celtic hierarchy have kind of put us in a position where, I framed it on the huddle breakdown as, irreconcilable differences. I was being a bit dramatic and, using the sort of analogy of divorce and all that in this instance. But I do feel the Celtic statement that was put out was so dismissive and so lacking in any warmth or respect in any shape or form that it really was a sort of relationship ending missive in my view. I just don't see any way back if you look at it through the lens of a constructive relationship between the board and the support, in all honesty. And therefore, what to do, how to move forward. So it's been amazing as well to see the sort of unity in terms of the support in general. I mean, the Celtic support is not a support that I would characterise as being of a hive mind. And herding cats springs to mind. But remarkable unity being shown thus far. I hope it continues. I sincerely hope it continues over the course, and it actually might be the catalyst for wider supporter engagement and wider supporter unity. The support isn't going to agree on every issue, and nor should it. That shouldn't stop people getting behind particular specific issues and parking the differences at the door. And that's really the only way that any meaningful change is going to occur, is if things are approached in that with that sort of philosophy.
Alan, I think you're absolutely right. It's fine to disagree. It's fine to vehemently disagree. Everybody on the chat, everybody who appears on A Celtic State of Mind, and every single person that signed up to the movement, the as yet unnamed Celtic fan movement, wants the best for Celtic. People who are giving me it tight on social media want the best for Celtic. They may not agree with the action that's going to be taken, but we've just always got to keep that at the core. And I think on Wednesday at the meeting, the one thing that struck me, and it was so important, was just leaving all that at the door, Alan. You're right, leaving all the differences at the door. And that's exactly what happened. I'm going to bring up this one, and I'm going to throw it over to you, Brian. Robert is in on the YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us and for continuing to come in and keeping the comments flowing. It's a frustrating time as Celtic fans, and it's as good for us 1 hour a day as it is for you to come in for this daily therapy session. Robert says on the YouTube, hope Jim is on today. Get a bit of sense. Fridays are not the same without the Oracle on the show. Well, we do have two guests who are going to offer incredible insight and opinion on the subject of Celtic and everything that's going on. But the reason I bring this up, Robert, Jim Orr is not here for a very good reason. In checking, I couldn't believe this. It's been a busy week. But once I got round to checking the rota, Brian, I noticed that Acsom was in for the pre-match press conference this afternoon. And as if by magic, the timing of that was brilliant. I thought to myself, I don't know if this invite is still live. So anyway, I sent my RSVP and copied the Oracle in. And Jim, as we speak, what time is it? 12:34. Jim will be on his way to Lennoxtown as we speak to represent A Celtic State of Mind at today's press conference. Now, it's changed a wee bit over the period since Don Mackay left. It used to be separated. Fan media, there's your conference. Mainstream media, there's your conference. And it's evolved to the point where we're in the press conference today. It's just a press conference and we're in it. The reason I'm throwing this over to you, Brian, what did you ask Brendan today?
Wow. That's
I probably should have texted you that one half an hour or an hour before the show.
I think that's what they call
a hospital pass.
Paul, that's
it's a hospital pass, absolutely.
You slightly done me in there. First of all, though, I have to say I do agree with Robert. Jim always provides a good bit of sense on a Friday. So we've got Jim for sense and Alan for stats and me for another S word that I'm sure you can come up with in the comments. But I think that what you're going to have that press conference today is the same sort of routine questions of, Brendan, how do you get the squad together? Brendan, how do you deal with everything that's going on? I think that you would have to just ask him, clearly you've been unhappy. Clearly you felt, alongside the fans, there's been a disconnect. What is your reaction to the message for the board? Now, probably more than likely he's been told, don't rise to these questions. And, to be fair, I think you can tell when Brendan's operating off his own back and when he's been sort of had his hands scaled because
off-piste, I think we call it.
I off-piste off, I think sometimes, but I think you can
absolutely
you can tell when he's sort of annoyed and when he's been honest, and you can tell when Desmond's been on the phone and kicking his head in a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what version of Rodgers we get today. I suspect for him, he will just want to try and keep the players on track and try and keep people focused. And what I hope happens is he adopts the sort of Gordon Strachan siege mentality.
Yeah.
Gordon Strachan was always great for sort of getting the players. So everyone's against us. The press is against us. Media's against us. Other teams are against us. Refs are against us. It's just us against the world. And he had that, and he really galvanised the squad with that. And I hope Brendan does that as well, because I said last week, if he's going to spend the rest of the season with a sort of boo-boo face on and complaining and making excuses, that's no good for anybody. So I think what he has to do is, I think, compared to previous seasons where he's been in this position, the fans have got his back. Despite the fact he's made some tactical decisions that I wouldn't agree with, and I think he could have been a bit more proactive with some changes. I think, broadly speaking, the fans back him in the situation he's in. So I think he has to try and lean into that and really sort of go, okay, Celtic fans, you want your team to perform. I want your team to perform. I agree with all your points. I can only affect what I can affect. And I think he has to be canny enough to separate himself from the discussion, but also acknowledging in the way that the board simply haven't the fans' concerns. And hopefully, Jim will be able to coax that out of him. He's not scared to ask the hard questions, Jim. And I hope he goes in there in disguise, because if they realise he's from Acsom, he'll probably get turfed right back at the door. I suspect that the fact they're clearly not on the pulse is why we've still got an invite to that. So that'll be interesting to see if he's getting huckled out and dragged out to security.
Yeah, that would certainly make headlines. Keevans-esque departure from Celtic press conference.
Yes.
Jim Orr was there on Wednesday. It was great to see the OG, if you like, of kind of Celtic fan movement, Save Our Celts, way back in the early 90s. That predated the Celts for Change movement that came later and escalated everything to a degree whereby the business people could step in when required and make the big difference. Some great points coming through, and I'm going to try and work through as many of them as possible. First one, thank you for your support. Where is it now? Someone was telling me here. Right, Rob Lilly is giving us a wee bit of feedback. You should have an intro, 20 seconds-ish, as when videos go live, always miss the first words as an ad plays over until you find the skip button. Rob, thank you for that. I wasn't aware of it because I'm here and I don't watch them live. So particularly when we move into our wee hub in Glasgow, we'll have some kind of video intro, and that will probably see us through that initial period. Kieran Deeney, you're in and saying on the YouTube, think the supporters will back Brendan and the team to the hill on Sunday and make a statement. There has obviously been, Alan, a lot of discourse on the socials. Not so much in the meeting, I've got to say, on Wednesday night. It was overwhelmingly in favour of taking action this Sunday. And the action had been discussed and the action was decided before obviously being filtered out. So that's something that wasn't the case in the room. But once you put that out onto a social media platform, you do get a lot of people who disagree with it. In fact, there is a minority, but obviously it's amplified on social media, Alan. And a lot of people are saying, well, why are you doing this? Without any, I think you should do this instead. Just, why are you doing this? This is going to harm the team. I just think that, there has to be action taken when the momentum is this high, when the amount of groups who have joined the open letter and this fan movement, this fan collective is unprecedented. the types of groups who are on there in terms of associations is absolutely unprecedented, and you need to follow it up. Now, on Sunday, you've got to remember games live on Sky. Also, Chris Sutton, prior to an article that he released this morning, was on the fan side. You know, you could tell that the way he was speaking, he was on the fan side. He's done an article this morning which more or less backs up what the fans are doing, speaks about it. So when it happens, you're going to have that amplification of the message. A message that if we talk about it on here, or if we have it in a meeting on Wednesday, the board can actually ignore that message, Alan. If you do it to the broadcast, the global broadcast, I'm not sure what the audience is these days on a Sky Sports Live game. It's probably doubled or trebled once everybody gets their dodgy sticks in place. But it will be amplified because it's a live game. There's an opportunity to amplify it, and the opportunity has been grasped. There's a lot of people giving some feedback in here as well. Let me just check. And I think that, yeah, here we go. Jungle Line makes a really good point here. The club will try to spin this as a few scallywags in the ultra movement stirring up unrest, and will try to ban them next. Huge OG if they do. And this is the thing as well, Alan. Although the ultra fan movement are involved within the larger movement, it's not being driven by any one individual group. Some of the press have already tried to label this whole movement on the ultras. That's not the case. The ultras are going to be so important when you look at what they can do to coordinate something like Sunday. The fan media are going to be so important to put it out there in a coordinated fashion online. But it is a collective movement. In terms of what it does, the impact, we don't expect the board to crumble on Sunday. This is the first step in a long escalatory process, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is, I feel slightly nervous getting into this territory because, so I want to state unequivocally, right, that I completely respect 100%, you know, the view, the unity, and the action that was agreed by the vast majority of supporters. I saw the results of the survey. They were probably different, and I'm absolutely in the minority on this, and I accept that. But you know, you brought me on here to ask my opinion, presumably. So I'll give my opinion, but please don't mistake this for me trying to tell people what to do. It's just an opinion. As I say, for me, the most important thing is the unity aspect, and you know, I will continue to support this, you know, in the wider sense, try and enforce change at Celtic because for many reasons that are, you know, clearly obvious and been amplified over the last week or so. My own personal view is that, you know, I wouldn't do anything that actually harmed or could harm the performance of the team on the pitch. That's just, to me, it's counterproductive and it's self-harming. Actually, ultimately this is about football, and we're supporting a football team, and we want to watch football. That's at the end of the day what it's all about. And you know, I think the team is facing huge challenges this season to meet anywhere near. I don't think we're going to meet the standards we've met in the last few seasons because of poor recruitment, because of an aging squad, because of, you know, weaknesses in key positions, because of failure to recruit, because of players that want to leave and not being allowed to leave. All of this is very redolent of 2021 in terms of the state of the squad, and potentially a manager who's refusing to dip into his bag of tactical goodies and change up the way that the team is playing to fit the realities of the squad that he has to work with. All of those things, I think, will result in a less effective Celtic on the park. There are risks piled upon risks as far as the team state is in at the moment. So I think the team is going to have to receive every possible backing this season from us to, you know, to mitigate some of these potential weaknesses in the way that the team is performing. And, you know, there's a cynical side to what I'm saying as well, in the sense that I always think never give professional footballers an excuse for playing badly. You know, oh, you know, we didn't hear the noise, we didn't feel the team were behind us. You know, whether it's the manager or it's the players, you don't want to give them an excuse not to perform. You know, I think there's plenty of scope for protest, so long as the team on the pitch are showing. Because ultimately, you know, Brendan Rodgers, you know, if you think back, I didn't even mention that disgusting personal attack in the Sun newspaper that came from
Yeah.
the club. The fact that no one's been sacked on the back of that suggests that tacitly, at least the board approved the message of what was in that article. So
Mhm.
that's disgusting to me. And that again is a red line. It's not even a flag. That's a red line completely. So Rodgers has been let down. The team has been let down. Callum McGregor is the last person in the world that would ever come out publicly and say anything that might be construed as being disloyal to the club. And if he's asking for help for the players, which he did, that to me was a huge moment, actually.
Yeah.
In his own understated, respectful way, he said that the team needed help. It needed, so that's he's reflecting in a very polite way, if you like, the mood of the dressing room, which I suspect the reality is less polite than that. So the team has been let down. The manager's been let down. We've been let down. We are the football club. We need to stick together on this. So again, that's my view. I am in the minority. Obviously, direct action, has been agreed upon. I respect that. I support it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it makes a difference. And as I say, I'll continue to support any unifying actions with whether I agree with them or not. Obviously we all have lines. I wouldn't want any criminal damage or people being hurt or any of that sort of stuff. Obviously, that hopefully goes without saying. But as I say, that's just my opinion. I'm not here to tell people what to do, and people should do what's best for their conscience, and I hope it works.
This is what's important as well, Alan. If you disagree with this and you have a ticket, if you're lucky enough to have a ticket, the people who go to the away games follow the club all over the country, and they may turn around and say, well, why on earth am I not going to go to my seat? And they'll go and they'll sit in their seat, and that's fine as well. And that was the basis of part of the conversation on Wednesday, Brian, was all about, look, no one's going to be treated any differently. No one's going to be treated as if they're crossing a picket line here. This is an action, one of many actions that will be taken. And again, another thing I would say here, we're running an episode of This Is Acsom tonight. I wanted to get it out earlier, but this week's been rather busy, and it's going out at the normal time of 6 o'clock on Friday night. And what David Lowe, who is the guest, talks about is obviously a different approach. In relation to looking at the shareholding at Celtic, right? So there's a different approach, and that can happen at the same time as the fan movement. And then on Wednesday night, there was a tremendous, there was a tremendous speech by one of the those in present from the fan media world, who said, that's all fair and well. What I would suggest, my suggestion is this. My suggestion is you look at the corporate governance. My suggestion is that you have a fund where you actually get some solicitors, some corporate lawyers in to have a look at how certain things have been done in the past. And then those individuals who may have been conducting themselves in a way they shouldn't, Brian, can be targeted in that way. So the way that I look at it is that there are many different things that can all happen at the same time. And some people, some groups might be better suited to focusing all their time and energy on that section of it, whereas others, and this is exactly what's going to be happening, can focus elsewhere. And I think that the big aspect of this for me is we can't let the board off the hook. I think you're okay to make it uncomfortable for them because they've made it uncomfortable for fans. They've made it uncomfortable for players who are now going to have to stay here until January, and they might not want to be at the football club, so that it's going to be uncomfortable for them. They made it uncomfortable for Brendan Rodgers on Friday. In that horrific hit piece that Alan's already mentioned. They made it uncomfortable for him by not getting the quality in from January right up to date. So I think some of that uncomfortable feeling, and that for me could be amplified at the weekend, and that's going to start. There's already been this message, this vote of no confidence in the board at Celtic. There's already been 3 individuals named in terms of their positions no longer being tenable at Celtic Park. And those 3 were Michael Nicholson, Peter Lawwell and Chris Mackay. So that's already been put out there. The club have not responded. They've not responded, Brian. And that's why I think people think, right, okay, we need to be more vocal about this, because the club have simply ignored the open letter signed by over 400 different groups. Almost 40,000 people filled in the survey individually in relation to that, and the results were overwhelming. The club have failed to respond. So you then try to amplify the message and get more vocal about it. In terms of this multi-pronged approach, this multifaceted approach, Brian, that's really the only way we can go with this. We can't just put ourselves into one lane on this one.
No, and I think what's really key is, so first of all, I think the sort of 12-minute delay is actually a really clever way of going about it, because I think what that illustrates is it should tangibly show the direct effect the fans have on the players on the park. So that initial period of silence, and then the fans came in, I think they'll be roaring when they come in, and I think it will really illustrate how important they are. But more than that, and this is the key thing for any of these approaches, is it has to be consistent. So doing it once, 12-minute late coming isn't going to affect anything. But if there's a consistent approach, what that'll do is every time Celtic are playing on Sky or on camera, it's going to be called out, it's going to be addressed. And what that does is that'll put pressure on the board, because their reputation externally will start to suffer. And people saying, do you see what's happening with Celtic? This has been happening for a month now, this has been happening for 2 months now, it's been happening for the summer. And then the more people talk about it, the more that pressure comes in, and the more that the sort of the accountability should go up, because there's more people aware of the problems. So I think it's quite a clever way of going about it, but consistency is the key. And whether that's the sort of 12-minute late coming, whether that's the governance action, regardless of what form it takes, we really have to sort of be consistent and clear, what are the objectives, what we want to do. And I thought that when you look at the statements, the one that came out with the sort of 7 steps of what we want, I thought that was excellent. I thought it was really clear. And I thought it was the first time that unity, that unified view of these are the changes we want, regardless of how we do it, which, people are going to disagree on and agree on and see the merits there for and against, but the actual measures were really clear. So I think that's really important that we keep consistent and we look at that, sort of multi-pronged approach, because that's the way you're going to hit home. It's going to be so embarrassing for them in every other club. Mainstream media who, especially some mainstream medias are falling over themselves to leak their articles and attack the manager. That should be really impactful. And just one thing I want to say, I don't normally, but I was having a look at the comments just out of interest. And, there's one guy in particular, I won't credit them with saying his name, but you don't know who he is. All he's done is moan. Acsom didn't want action. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. This isn't going to work. This is rubbish. What would you do? Give a solution, right? There's no point in complaining about all the things that are wrong and then criticising every solution put forward. If you're not happy and you don't agree, fine. Don't be happy, don't agree. But don't insult people and don't attack people that are actually trying to make the change that the majority of Celtic fans want. So you're not happy about, if you don't want change, fine. That's up to you. If you want change, how would you do it? But to criticise everybody and be petty and, I'm choosing all politely because we're on camera, but I just think it's a shambolic. But thankfully, people like this character are the minority. And to Alan's earlier point, there is a new unity about the Celtic support this time that we've not had before. And I think everyone, everyone that attended that session on Wednesday, everyone that's actively went about their business so professionally and organised well in this movement that's been created, I think is really, really, really quite sensational. And I think it will be effective as long as, to my earlier point, we're consistent across the piece, because that's real key. Because to your point, Paul, the board will just bunker in. They'll just hide, they'll turn up the PA, they'll not attend matches, they'll bunker down, they'll not talk to anybody, and they'll hope it blows over. And I just don't think that's going to work this time. And I think that we're going to force them into some form of accountability pretty quickly, in my eyes.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the team as well, Alan. We need to get stuck in about this new look team, if it is going to be a new look team. But in relation to throwing Brian under the bus there, what would you ask Brendan? And I've got to say, Brian, you did really well, because you were talking all the way whilst thinking about your answer. I like that.
I do that in every aspect of my life. I just sort of go around in a circle until I get to the point. It's like I'm buffering in real time.
It's a fantastic skill, let me tell you. I think the big thing for me was, you look at that newspaper article last week, Alan, you look at the conversations and the press conferences that Brendan's been given. Now, we all kind of hang off his every word. There's some clubs where the press conferences are probably not even worth tuning into. You just want to know who's fit and who's not for the weekend. But when Brendan Rodgers speaks, I do think that it is pretty much box office Brendan. But what was happening is, you know, there was a flip-flopping of, this is a Brendan interview press conference, and this is one that he's been briefed on. And you got a sense of that leading into, you know, the last few days of the window. One very, very interesting thing I'm going to share with everybody tuning in, we had spoken about, and this isn't again a Nostradamus thing, this for me was just kind of like, if you were in this situation as a company, as a football club, as a group, what would you do? And we suggested, well, you would bring out an independent consultancy to come in and sort it out for you because your PR is rotten. And that's exactly what the club has done. So we've been informed that an independent corporate communications consultancy is now working alongside Celtic and their PR team. That doesn't surprise me, Alan, because they really need to do something. Because at the moment, they're not even tweeting out about Jockstein's 40th anniversary the other day. You know, it's almost as if, like Brian says, they're just shutting the curtains, shut the blinds, the storm will pass. But it looks as though they are bringing somebody in to try and sort this mess out, get them through the storm.
But listen, Celtic is a small business, right? And although it's got a lot of part-time employees who are mainly there on match days, you know, stewards and catering staff and all that sort of stuff, the actual number of full-time employees is very small. And therefore, you know, key individuals can have massive influence. A lot of people at Celtic have been there for an awful long time, probably beyond what is healthy and you know, natural churn in terms of new ideas, new voices, etc. And the PR function is abysmal. It's just abysmal. It's absolutely shocking, really. So that, I mean, that's almost the least of the issues, but it's certainly kind of one of them. Listen, you know, in the spirit of, and I appreciate people generally not agreeing with what I just said. I completely accept that, and as I say, I hope I might be wrong. What I would say in terms of, you know, direct action is ultimately the root cause, I believe, of the ills at Celtic are due to you know, a majority share or a large shareholder who believes they're the owner of the club and behaves as such and dictates policies and overrides policies as such potentially. Now, I don't think the corporate legal challenge route is probably going to be very fruitful for the reason that you just look at the performance of the football club as a business, look at the money in the bank, look at the profits that have been made. It'd be very difficult to make a case to say that the club hasn't been ran properly, whatever properly means. Now we know that, you know, every other shareholder is being ignored. The only way I think that ever is really going to change is if you know, the club is sold to, and then I think we're then in a territory which we have to be very careful what we wish for. We have to be very careful about who then comes after. But one of the positive aspects of any direct action, which is very public and like you say, gets coverage on Sky TV and all of that, is it does provide a potential new buyer with leverage. You know, if you see fans protesting, if you see unhappy customers and all that, and it's very obvious and that there's clear examples of it, it does give any potential new buyer, and I'm not saying there is one, I don't know. You know, it does give them leverage to, you know, in terms of that process, and it probably, you know, creates chatter throughout the world of potential investors in terms of a club that may well be ready for new investment in that sense because they see a disgruntled and disaffected support. So I think action is important and it has real value, as I say. So that's a kind of caveat to what I said. But ultimately, either you gain enough shareholders' support that you legally have a voice and can force the board to listen to you, or you either force or there is a sale of the club. I believe these are the only two things that will actually cause result in change. It's just again, people will disagree, but that's just my personal view.
Sure. I'm bringing this one up because it's a very good point. You may have noticed that there are no female Acsom contributors, not just today, but any day that you tune in. So DMG Soul Togetherness, thank you for that. But Kevin Graham's right. Kevin explains we have had some phenomenal contributors in the past who have moved on to other things, other avenues. Amy now works for the BBC, and very good she is at that as well. You would have seen her speaking to Stevie Clark, John McGinn, and all the top performing athletes the other night. Laura is on with your good self, Alan, on the Huddle Breakdown, and Natasha is living her family life. But the reason I brought that up is if there's anybody out there who fancies it, get in touch. Absolutely get in touch, because we are always welcoming new ideas, new contributors, new faces and voices. And get in touch. You can do that on the socials. You can comment underneath the video. If you want to do it in private, my email address is pauljohndykes@gmail.com. And it is safe to put that out there, because all the other nonsense just goes into the spam, the slabbering cabbage. If you start berating fans who don't feel comfortable following the action, then we could lose them altogether. Let fans do their own thing without hindrance. Remember, we all want what's best for Celtic. Absolutely. That is a very important message, and one that we discussed on Wednesday, and we will always put that out there without a shadow of a doubt. I'm going to ask, right, and I'm calling it the £100 million question. Is that a billion? Depends if you're in the UK or the US, I guess. Right, the £100 million question. So we're expecting the financials to come through very soon, probably this month, Alan, am I right in saying that, at some point? And
So.
if you look at last year's and you look at what we've done since then, the figure that comes out in terms of money in the bank might be around 100 million quid. It might be. It's there or thereabouts, right? And you ask yourself the question, why is it there? Why are we hoarding the dough, right? So we're certainly not doing it to go out and buy 3 £10 million players every transfer window, Brian. We're not doing that. There has been a suggestion, that I think the only real suggestion is that we're keeping it for a rainy day fund, just in case we don't qualify for the Champions League. But you don't need 100 million quid for that. And obviously, we now know through all the different discussion over the last week or so, through meeting minutes from the Michael Nicholson meeting with the CSA, the Association of Irish CSCs, and the affiliation in Scotland, is that they're certainly not building a new main stand. So what is the 100 million quid for, Brian? This is a massive question, and I've been scratching my head about this one. I found it quite interesting, and I might be barking up the wrong tree here, right? I almost said barking up the wrong street, just put two things together, but barking up the wrong tree, I might be. I found it quite interesting that in terms of the development of the main stand, in brackets, whilst in the SPFL, that's not something that's been discussed for a long, long time. Yeah, it's never been on the table for a long time in terms of a discussion that Celtic would be playing their football somewhere else. Is there things going on in the background we simply do not know about in relation to that? Because that did jump out at me when I was reading the minutes from that meeting. I mean, why would you put that in there? That this is not viable whilst we're playing in Scotland, basically, right? Well, it's never going to be viable, or it might be viable if we're not playing in Scotland. Found it a wee bit ambiguous. Am I looking too much into it, Brian?
I don't know if it's necessarily looking too much into it. I suspect it's been worded that way on purpose to sort of maybe as a distraction for some of the debate, or just as a sort of throwaway. But the thing is, we're going to know for definite what that 100 million is for, because Michael Nicholson's got on his wee board highlighted that it's going to be in touch to communicate clearly soon. So we can all rest easy. But like in seriousness, I said before, and again, it comes down to communication all the time. See if they come out at the start of the season and said, look, we're very, very cash rich. This is the plans. We can only give the 20 million for player trading, but we're going to improve the facilities at Celtic Park, which need done. We're going to fix the main stand. We're going to extend the stadium. We're going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to do all these things. Right? Give Tommy Burns and Fergus their statues, rename Lennoxtown, do all these nice things. We're going to put the money in and make sure the infrastructure of the club is the finest it can be. We're going to pay the salaries for the best data guys, the best sports scientists. We're going to make sure our facilities are great. That's where the money's going to be going over the next 3 years. That's what we intend to do. So you may not see the investment in the squad you would expect given the balances. However, this is the plan of attack. This is where we want to be, because we feel long term this is what's going to be best for the club and drive it forward to that world-class standard. But they haven't, and they're no intention of doing it. And it's a nonsense. And it's an easy win for them. And this is the thing about communication. Like, I know a lot of people scanned that statement they done, which was embarrassing, by the way. like really, really, really embarrassing. And they said, oh, something could have been written by AI. I don't really have a problem with that myself. What I have a problem is what they're asking AI to say. And it almost feels as if they said, can you please annoy the Celtic fans even more than you have in the most patronising tone possible? Like, 'cause it's just
Isn't that what,
outrageous.
John? Isn't that what Big Yogi put into Chat GPT, and it came out with a better
So
statement?
the big man did, aye.
A less offensive statement was produced.
Yeah, and it's bizarre in that way, and I love that. I can't remember who said it in the one of the chats, but they said the most Celtic thing is the fact their PR department's hiring a PR department to deal with their PR.
I know,
It's
I
just
know.
it's amazing we've got to that stage. But again, it all comes down to again the communication point. You know, what are they doing? And that was the most galling thing, I think, was the fact that they were asked directly several times, what is the strategy?
Mhm.
Just tell us. Don't keep telling us there is a strategy and then not telling us what it is. You can't just say, don't worry, lads, we've got a strategy. Don't worry, lads, it's on my board, it's highlighted. So I put a pin in it, so I'm going to come back to it. We can all relax, guys. I've got this. You can't do that. No business in any successful business works that way. Like every company will have a strategy, a plan for the year, financial, the overarching strategy, what that's going to look like, you quarterly updates usually, what that's going to be, what the objectives are, what the metrics are, what the triggers for those metrics are. There's all sorts of these things that go into any business. Celtic can't be run any differently. So just tell us what they are.
Mm.
Just be honest. And if they don't like it, you can always say, well, look, you asked us for honesty. We've been honest. We've been transparent. This is how we think it's going to be successful. You can agree or not, and then go from there. But that complete, bunkering in, not telling people, that's what's caused this sort of uprising. And, and I think it was yesterday you're talking to JP about it, but this isn't a reaction to the past couple of months. This has been a reaction for the past several years. And I dare say if we hadn't landed very luckily with Big Ange Postecoglou, this would have been happening before now.
I think you're right, Brian. I think you're right. And it's one of these discussions again that we were having on Wednesday in relation to this probably should have happened sooner. The collective, the movement, the fans coming together. Jim Orr speaks about success masking a million deficiencies, and I get that. I absolutely get it. And I think it's another fear of mine, and it's something we need to be really aware of, is that when things start going well again, and I'm sure they will on the park, by the way, I am sure we've got a good enough manager, and I still think we've got a good enough squad domestically to make it work, right? It might not look great and it might not be like swashbuckling, but I think we do. A lot of people will taper off from the activism because, the momentum swings in that regard. And that's why it's important to have a focus group and constantly bang the drum on this. But the £100 million question, Alan, I'll throw this over to you. I guess it ties in with one of the excuses on the statement being the regulations with regards to the financials on UEFA. And, even just when he says it without checking, you're looking at that going, that's not right. That's not right. Well, we're nowhere near it when the Swiss Ramble spoke about it last year. We're not going to be anywhere near it now. And then a few other commentators have come out and spoken and said, no, that's nonsense. But in relation to the 100 million, there must be a reason for it. There must be, Alan. It's not healthy, and they've spoken about this in the past, to have so much money sitting there doing nothing because you end up losing money. Have a buffer. Have a buffer there for something going wrong, something unexpected. But that's a lot. That's a lot for a club playing in Scotland. And apparently there's only one club in England with that kind of money sitting in the bank.
It makes absolutely no sense, and I don't have an answer for you on that. There must be things we don't know about. I mean, again, first port of call for any explanation is always incompetence. That is, generally the answer. But it is even a stretch to think that a club like Celtic, who we're led to believe was instrumental in framing the FSR, the Financial Sustainability Regulations, those ordinances that UEFA now uses to monitor clubs' financial performance across Europe that participate in their competitions. Celtic were in the room and central to framing the framework, the frameworks, the pillars that they use to monitor those clubs, and then at the same time don't know how to operate within them. That just seems incredible. the idea that the more cash you hoard, the less likely you are to be able to spend it because it's not counted as football revenue in that in that financial year. Therefore, you can't add it to your revenue figure and spend it as if it were revenue. Is astonishing. Why would you hoard money because you couldn't then spend it in the next year? And also you're going to be paying a lot of it, a big chunk of it, to the UK Treasury. I mean, the money that Celtic will pay in corporation tax, you could buy a decent right winger and centre forward. I mean, hello.
I know. Yeah.
So none of this makes any sense at all. I mean, everything that Brian laid out in terms of what could be done with that money makes. Nodding along, I agree with every single word he said in terms of stadium being the best that you could be off the park. If the club said that, and the expectation was that, look, other than what we get in from sales, money spent on players will be minimal for 2 or 3 seasons as we embark on these modernization initiatives and infrastructure upgrades. I'd be fine with that. I'd accept that. I'd say, yeah, fair enough. It makes sense in the long run. That looks good. But what you would do in the build up to doing that is you'd invest in younger players so that you could ride it out over that 3-4 year period that it took with a developing squad. And guess what? We've got an aging team. So
Yeah.
that makes no sense either. It's just nonsense. I mean, they've actually mismanaged the squad to such an extent. We've now got the oldest average age squad that we've had this century, even older than Martin O'Neill's team that
Interesting.
famously
Wow.
had very few younger players in it. So we're in a really bad situation in that regard. Because for a variety of reasons, that's not a good place to be, and it's totally counterintuitive to how most progressive clubs are developing their squads currently, especially with the emphasis on high energy pressing football. You kind of need young legs to implement that style of play. Celtic play that high counter pressing football, trying to move the ball quickly, move defenders around. All that it requires fit young athletes really to optimize on performance. So I don't have any magic answers for you. I mean, we can hope, and of course, the club not saying anything then just leads to speculation, and then just leads to conspiracy theories and all this sort of stuff. But there are no contingent liabilities in the accounts, so there isn't a known or a suspected rainy day that this is being saved for.
Yeah.
So, as I say, the FSR excuse. I mean, the good subscribers on Huddle Breakdown, in our comments, tore that down within 20 minutes. Because we're not as stupid as the board seem to think that we are, right?
I've always
so
said this,
it's not
Alan. I've always said
it's
that.
not an FSR thing. The rainy day thing, again, why would you hoard money for a rainy day and then create the rainy day?
I know.
You've created this rainy day by never investing in the squad to best prepare the team to get into the Champions League, in which case you wouldn't need a rainy day fund at all. It's just baffling. And as I say, the first port of call, until proven otherwise, is incompetence.
No, when you're talking there about, I don't know how other fan bases are able to come together, but I can only go through from what I have seen from the outside looking in. And what I do know is that if Celtic are challenged on anything, the fan base will just basically go out and learn what we don't know. And I go back to the early 90s. I go back to the way that people were able to come together there. You're reading about, the board going public and things like that in 1987 on the pages of Celtic fanzines. They're educating you at that point, and that was 7 years before Fergus came in and everything changed. And they were talking about it. They were so ahead of the curve. And I've always said this about our fan base. I don't know how the other fan bases work in that respect, but if we don't know something, we'll find out. And that is absolutely always been the way. In relation to the £100 million, I want to see the best academy. I want to see the best stadium facilities, and I want to see the best team on the park. And I think with that kind of buffer, we should be there, and we're not anywhere near that in relation to those three particular aspects of it. And when you look at the fact that there's a rainy day fund, right? What are we spending our money on? So we've invested heavily in the Barfield complex, which is hell of a overdue. I mean, the original date for that was November 2024, incidentally. So we're almost a year late. And I'm hearing that it's all down to just getting a couple of documents signed up at Glasgow City Council. You know what? Make someday that's your priority until they get signed, because you've hemorrhaged all this money in there and we can't use it. So you've got to make these kind of things happen as well. We're almost a year down the line, Brian, and it's still not been signed off. That is shambolic. Just tell us about it. Let us know as a fan base that it's not your incompetence, it's somebody else's, and let's ramp up the pressure to get it done. I'm going to bring in CFC 1888. What time is the press conference? Right now. We're 15 minutes in. Jim Orr might be speaking to Brendan Rodgers right now up at Lennoxtown. And I hope that an unedited version of that is put on the Celtic TV channel very, very soon. JJ Celtic, some really creative ideas coming out in relation to activism. All fans could pull out a red card on the 67th minute. I remember the red cards for Thatcher back in the centenary year, and JP Mason spoke about that last week as well. Very good idea. Stephen McDowell, big thanks to us for keeping us up to date on the Celtic issues. We'll do it every day, Stephen, 12:30 on a weekday, every match day, Friday night. And once we get our wee studio set up in Glasgow, we'll probably just go out even more often. Just keep the cameras running whilst we're making pots of tea and talking nonsense. Stephen, what changes? A lot of people are saying. Stephen McGonigal, double denim. Do you think getting scarves made would work? There's obviously a conversation going on in the chat. There has been a suggestion, and it came through on Wednesday night as well. Tim's brought it up, I believe, saying that the 20-minute Tim's boys had spoken about a black and green scarf. I remember, was it FC United of Manchester? It was the green and gold. They did a scarf, and it was all about, we are backing this movement. Sack the board on one side, back the team on the other. David C., you're on the YouTube. Getting rid of the three that we mentioned won't change anything. This is a very good point. They're just following orders from Desmond. I can't see how this changes unless we have a forward-thinking new owner or owners. We've seen it. We've spoken about it. Don Mackay walks in the building, different ideas, different take on things, different approach, and he'll last something like 77 days, and he's bounced right back out the building, Brian. We've seen this. This comes into a way of thinking, a way of working. Some might say even the culture of the football club, and if you don't fit in with that clique and that culture, you won't last. And I've heard this said, right? So let's say, and the knee-jerk reaction of the club won't be, oh, let's just get rid of them, let's do what we're told. But let's just say that in the fullness of time, all three of the named individuals leave the football club. They will be replaced by the same people who put them in place. There will still be that same attitude. That's the concern of many of the people who are commenting today. And I think that you couldn't possibly walk in and just do the same job if your predecessor had been binned for doing it that way, Brian. You would need to have a different approach. But that is my concern, that they would be replaced like for like.
Yeah, and look, there's every potential of that. What I think in an ideal world, because it's going to be very, very, very difficult to oust Dermot Desmond. In an ideal world, you get someone in there that goes, right, this is what he wants. This is how he wants it. Let's find a way of, being transparent with the fans, talk about that sort of strategy we've got in place while servicing his needs. So if you can go, don't worry, Desmond, we're still dominant domestically, still money in the bank, and this is what we're doing on the side, and you're clear with the fans, you could still have I think there's still a scenario where there's a team around him who can service sort of both masters, if you will. So I think that it's not out with the realms of possibility, because again, you're making assumptions about what he's saying and what he's doing and what Law's role in that is and what Mackay's Nicholson's role and stuff like that is. So we don't really know exactly. I think that there is a potential where if there was new individuals in there and a reshuffle of the board and get some sort of fresh blood and some fresh takes, it could be the case that, whatever sort of, I suppose, benchmarks and milestones he's aiming for are matched, but it's done in a way that pleases the fans. It could be, but ultimately we're not going to know until there's change. What I don't think we can have, and what I suggested before, I thought they might throw Nicholson under the bus and sort of blame him and move him on and just replace him and everything goes back to normal, which won't, do anything for anyone. Again, I think it needs sort of wholesale industrial change, or someone with the ideas to sort of go, okay, this is how we can do it in such a way that it pleases Desmond and it services the football inside. Who that can be, what that could look like is very, very hard to say. But I don't think it's a hopeless endeavour to hope that changes. I think there is a world where that could work. But one of the things that has to happen is we need to be clear on what the accountability is for each area. So, like, we don't know who's in charge of recruitment, which is the key thing we'll talk about. We simply don't know. I don't really know what Tisdale's remit is. I think Darnell Day's still pathway manager. What does that look like? What does that?
O'Day's away, and he's been replaced by Sean Maloney.
Oh, that's right. Aye, what days at
The
Swansea?
new Pep, Sean Maloney.
The new Pep. Aye, same number of eyes. But the point being that if you knew what that looked like, just that's the thing. They're accountable for this. They're accountable for this. Yada yada yada. CEO oversees it all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It would just it's like simple wins that could go a long way to sort of bridging that gap. But ultimately, and I sound like a broken record, it has to be about communication.
Yeah.
And that statement sort of in many ways sums up the board. That sort of arrogant, lazy, patronising approach. And it's got to the point where I think at times in the past we thought is Dermot Desmond being, is he digging his heels in to annoy the Celtic fans? Is it a sort of battle between the two? I generally think it's just negligence at the highest order at that level. It's just a complete, lack of sort of understanding and ambition and and I made a joke about it earlier with the comments about the circled on the board what I have to do, but it feels like that's the attitude. It's like, oh, don't worry, it's in hand. You don't have to worry. It's
made that
quite
up,
embarrassing.
If somebody made that up, Brian, you would doubt. You would be like,
it sounds like something I would say as a joke. It sounds like something I would come up with as some sort of, I bet they're doing this in the boardroom for a laugh.
If anybody's wondering if they maybe missed the episode where we discussed this, Brian, just to revisit that before I come to Alan, I promise, Alan, we will talk about football. The Michael Nicholson meeting, which took place with the association, the affiliation, who are both based in Scotland, and the Association of Irish Celtic Supporters Clubs. This is where this comment was made. And we had Jerry at the meeting on Wednesday, who representing the AICSC. And he was speaking about this. And he said that Martin, who's Martin? Who is Martin? I'm not sure. I'm maybe thinking about Martin O'Neill. Michael Nicholson was saying that there is a vision and it's on the whiteboard in his office. And highlighted as must communicate with fans. So it was bizarre to hear that they haven't communicated. They've never communicated this. It does exist on a whiteboard somewhere in the offices of Celtic Park, and they contact the fans and let them know it has been highlighted with a highlighter, but it's never happened to date. I'm going to come to you. We are going to talk about football. Dermot Desmond, just to go back on this in terms of his power, his dominance. We're going to be talking tonight with David Lowe in relation to this. This is what he's got. Ordinary shares. He has 32,772,073 of those, currently valued at £57,351 and 13 pence. I'll chuck in the 13 pence. Preferred shares, 8 million, valued at 30 million. And preference shares, 5,131,300, valued at £9,236,286. This is why I call him the immovable object, Alan. He has got a dominance in relation. He's not got a majority share. He's not the owner of the Celtic, but he has a dominance within the corridors of Celtic, even though he's not there very often. The people that might say, "Oh, Brian, you're in Swindon, you never go to games." Alan, you're in Sheffield, you never go. Look at you talking about fan movements. You're never at the games. We've been to more games than Dermot Desmond in the last 25 years. Individually, we have. I mean, that's a fact. And yet he's got all this power and all this control. When we whittle it down and we talk about the football, Alan, this is going to be the first game back since the window slammed shut. We might get a glimpse of some new talent in there. Brendan Rodgers, big question. Does he change in terms of the shape, his approach? Yes or no? How do you see us shaping up? Who are you looking forward to seeing? Who we might not have seen yet?
So just before I get into that, I'll just tell you a quick Dermot Desmond story. I was told that, I can't remember how long ago it was, probably at least 10 years ago, maybe more, Celtic were playing a pre-season tournament in Dublin. And a few of the Celtic fans had been in a meeting with Dermot Desmond the day before in Dublin. And so Celtic are playing in Dublin, literally 20 minutes from where Desmond was domiciled at that time. Did he go to the games? No, he didn't. They were virtually playing in his back garden, and he still didn't go to the games.
They
So,
closed
you
the
know,
curtain.
that tells you all you need to know about his love of Celtic, I think. But
Yeah.
getting back to the football then, so I mean, if any, hopefully a few of you like the huddle breakdown. I've been talking on there with James about um, a change, quite a radical change of shape, really, for the team that would solve a lot of, or at least not solve, but certainly reduce risk in a lot of different areas that we're seeing on the park at the minute. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, which is disappointing to me because one of the aspects of Rodgers returning that I was really looking forward to was that in his Leicester City days, where he, for 3 years in a row, the most successful period of sustained success Leicester City have ever had in their history. I mean, they won the league before that, obviously, but then they were mid-table the season before that, and they were near the bottom the season after. The only time they've ever been in the top 6 or 7 for 3 years in a row it was under Brendan Rodgers,
Hmm.
and the way that he achieved that, which is if you think about how difficult it is in the English Premier League to break into that top 6 or 7 clubs. We see the amount of money that Tottenham Hotspur, Aston Villa, Newcastle United are spending to try and break into that, and Manchester United, to try and break into that top of the table. It's hundreds of millions of pounds that you're needing to spend on players to do that. So Rodgers did that, and one of the ways that he achieved it was through his tactical flexibility. We had a lad who is an analyst that studies all Leicester City's games. We had him on the podcast when Rodgers was announced, and he was telling us all about this, and I was really excited about it. How he would go to Arsenal, and you might play 3 at the back, you might play a 5 at the back, or various shapes, various configurations to suit the opposition, especially the bigger teams in the Premier League, and achieved some amazing results. I think they had a 5-2 win at Manchester City, and that was, as I say, 6, 7 years ago when Manchester City were probably at their peak under Guardiola. They achieved
Hmm.
some remarkable results in that time, and so I was really looking forward to seeing how this version of Rodgers would manifest at Celtic, and we simply haven't seen it. We simply haven't seen it. So I'm hoping that given the lack of support he's had in building and refreshing the squad for this campaign, and given the sort of square pegs round holes that we're having to put up with, the injuries to key positions, I'm hoping, but it is only a hope, that we see something a bit more radical from him, how he's going to recalibrate this team to be as effective as it can be, given the parts that he's got. Um, but I've got no confidence that will actually happen, sadly. But I think there is a need. I think there's a need to be quite radical with the lineup, and to really sort of switch it around to get the best out of the current group of players. I am excited to see Ternepke, because he's the kind of dribbling take-on player that is becoming more vogue, actually. We lost the art of players that like to dribble and take people on. They were kind of coached out of it. The
Hmm.
highly positional, rigid sort of structures of play that the likes of Guardiola and others has been the sort of the trend over the last 10 or 15 years. You having dribbly, unpredictable players hasn't been hasn't fitted into that style of play, but it's making a comeback because people are now having to break down better organised defences, etc. So I'm excited to see him specifically. My concern with him is that although his dribbling and take-ons very good, huge volume, one of the highest of any player in Europe, actually, you know, there's no evidence that at the end of it there's elite levels of decision making and sort of final product, which sadly sounds an awful lot like Yang. But I'm not. I think he would be way, way, way more technically proficient than Yang. By the way, I'm not. I'm not. Don't quote me on that because that would be misquoting me. So I'm excited to see him, but I really want to see Rodgers dip into his tactical toolbox and surprise us, and really come up with a more coherent way of playing that better fits the parts that we have.
No, I am. Look, obviously, always looking forward to Celtic returning, Brian. Some new faces. That's always given us a boost as well as fans. Are you a bit concerned that we're a wee bit lopsided? I was going to ask you this, Alan. You know, it does seem as though Balakwisha and Tunetsky are more or less or more weighted to the left-hand side of the park. Is that safe to say? Who do you reckon is more of the right-sided winger?
Neither have got really. I mean, they've played a few games. They're like literally a
I was
handful.
hoping he would give us some insight, Brian. None of them. We've got loads of left wingers, no right wingers.
No,
Brilliant.
no. But Balakwish's sweet spot would be a kind of inside left position. So sort of, and that's why I think, if we played two attacking midfielders behind a striker,
Yeah.
that would be the sweet spot for both Nigran on the right and for Balakwisha on the inside left.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Turnetsky is more of a traditional winger, but he's a left winger. He's always played left wing. And then on the right, obviously, we've still got the issue that it's either Forrest, who, we can't, just to be fair to James, we can't be flogging him for 60 games as a starting right wing. That's just not going to happen. And Yang, the poor kid, I don't know where his head's going to be after the way he's been treated. And he was never going to be the answer anyway, bless him, in terms of his just innate ability. So that is a concern. I say, my for what it's worth, I'd have Engels as a right wing back and Turnecki on the left. I'd stiffen the midfield, move Hattati deeper to support McGregor because he's too isolated, especially in transition. I'd have the two boys behind Maeda, and I'd have a back three. And I'd say to Tierney, you play left-sided centre-back. I don't want you rampaging up the wings. You don't look like you're going to last another 5 minutes the way his fitness looks at the moment. That's my... I can go into a lot of detail if you want to, if you're interested in what I've just said in huge detail. Have a look at huddlebreakdown.com. I break it all down and explain my rationale. And we haven't got time today. I appreciate that.
It's quite exciting, actually, Brian, isn't it? Just to change the shape like that. And by the way, I think the Kieran Tierney take is an important one with regards to what you're expected to do if you're playing in a full-back role for Celtic versus where Tierney is physically. And you think to yourself, well, why not? Why not play him as part of a back three?
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I'm similar to Alan. I questioned a lot, and I've questioned Brendan quite a lot. To be fair, I not made any secret of the fact that I wasn't hugely keen on coming back. But what I did concede was, I thought tactically he was always very, very astute, and I agree with Alan about Leicester. I thought, well, what he will do is, in game tweak, change. They can maybe different formations, perhaps different teams, and it made me excited for his performances in Europe. And while I think he never changed shape in Europe, in the Champions League there was certainly differences to approach. So you sort of saw bits of it, but the team was fairly settled. So he sort of went, okay, maybe he's not needing to change it. I was disappointed at the start of this season because clearly, we were talking about how we had no wingers and we kept playing with two wingers. And it reeked of stubbornness for me. And you think, surely you can switch it up here. There's got to be better ways. And and going to your Kieran Tierney question, it may be the case he's best served as a left centre back, or as the left of a back three. Again, let's try it and see. Like I just think that maybe now, if I'm being optimistic, right, since it's been not the most optimistic show so far, to be fair, given the circumstances, but maybe now Rodgers knows what he's working with and he knows it can't change until January in terms of personnel. Maybe now's the time he goes, right, okay, I'm working with what I've got. Let's get the best out of it. Let's change it up a little bit. But we don't know. I just hope that, as I said at the start, I hope he adopts a sort of siege mentality with the players and says, look, there's issues with the club, but the fans are behind you guys. I'm behind you guys. Let's be successful. Let's work together. I'll protect you from the any flack that does come my way, and let's go on with this. And give us all something to cheer about and sort of and find that, as I say, that happy path between making a statement against the board, but also backing the team, which is going to be really important.
Yeah, and I hope by Sunday after the game we can talk about that. The performance, brilliant. The protest, brilliant. I'm hoping we can have the best of both worlds. Brian. We don't ask for much. We want the best of both worlds. Thanks everybody for getting involved. It really has been an interesting discussion as always with Brian Degnan and Alan Morrison. Thanks for all your comments. Give us a big like on the YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're up at 35,000 subs, so keep subscribing and tuning in. We do appreciate it. I'm going to go back in time this evening, not by going to Greenock. I love going to Greenock. I love going to the Celtic clubs in Greenock, but we do have an event tonight that I'm hosting, and it's with John Hartson, Jackie McNamara and Stan Petrov. We're going to be talking about the last time we made it to a European final. Hopefully not the last time in my lifetime anyway. But that will be tonight. There are some tickets available. I am hosting this event this evening. It's on the, obviously the date is tonight, and it's at the Tontine Hotel. Ticket link underneath the video. If you like what you're seeing just now and you want a wee bit more of that, come back at 6 o'clock tonight. We have an exclusive interview with David Lowe talking all about Dermot Desmond and what to do if you are a shareholder. Tune in at 6 o'clock tonight. I'm looking forward to watching it back. I'll probably be on the road at that point. And that is a show called This Is Acsom that we do every Friday night. Suggestions for guests, let us know in the comments section. Want to join the show? And if you want to join the show and you're a female voice, get in touch. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Thank you to Alan and Brian for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.